Have you ever found greater joy when you serve others than being served? The first time when I went on a mission trip in my church college group, I expected we could do something special, something big for those whom we met and served. But in reality, we learned much more than we were able to give and serve. And most importantly, I found unexplainable joy in it. We are not called to be a good customers or consumers in the world, but we are called to be God's servant for God's mission. And in fact, the word serve, serving, service, or servants appear over 100 times throughout the Bible. As we continue to discover 5 essential practices of the Christian life, today Pastor Chris will teach us why and how we serve God and others on the journey walking with Jesus. So let's get started our worship with songs of praise for our God who loves us more than we can imagine and who calls us to follow.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith would be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Without borders, let me walk upon the waters wherever as my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine. I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. You say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I'm strong when I think I'm weak. And you say I'm held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I'm yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. You say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I'm strong when I think I'm weak. And you say I'm held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I'm yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. You'll have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. You say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I'm strong when I think I'm weak. And you say I'm held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I'm yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe.
Hello and welcome to the service of worship here at Haddonfield United Methodist Church, especially on this on-demand service. Wherever or whenever you may be. We are so grateful to walk this journey with you as we follow our Jesus together. If you are looking for a community to belong to, or if you want to learn more about our community, please let us know you're here by using our online connected card with a link on the screen. And we also want to offer the new membership class for those who want to learn more about our community or who want to join our church community. And if you are interested in, please let us know by emailing at office@haddonfieldemc.org, or you can check more information at haddonfieldemc.org/now. Our website, haddonfieldemc.org, is a hub of communication with you, where you can find what's happening in the life of the church, in worship, serving, giving, and learning more about God's ministries here at HMC. Especially haddonfieldemc.org/now is where you will be able to find everything you need today, including worship resources and how to get involved more in the life of the church. So I encourage you to visit our website, haddonfieldemc.org/now anytime. Are you excited about this beautiful fall season? Yes, I do. And I'm very excited about our Trunk or Treat and Fall Festival coming in 2 weeks from now. We hosted on Saturday, October 29th at 2 p.m. in our parking lot to serve larger communities around us. This is a kids-friendly event to celebrate this season together and to share the sweetness of God's love. We expect about 500 kids to attend this event, and so we need your help in various ways. First of all, you can host your trunk with decorations and candies. We can have 50 cars in our parking lot, and so far we have 23 registered trunks. So if you are interested in, please do not hesitate to register your trunk today. Or you can help us by donating the candies, individually wrapped or nut-free candies. You can drop it off in our welcome center in the building, or on Amazon wishlist is available for candy donations. The wishlist is found on QR code on the screen. You can find the link at haddonfieldemc.org/now. And monetary donation is another way to support this event, and it is always appreciated. Did you know about our long mission partnership with the Los Cocos community in the Dominican Republic? We have been blessed to help families in need of the new houses in the Los Cocos community by building 1 or 2 houses each year for 10 years. We have been sending a mission team every year, but we were not able to send them for last 2 years because of the pandemic. Next February in 2023, we are planning to send a mission team for the 23rd and 24th houses to build, and each house costs about $7,000. We invite you to be a part of this important mission today by giving online by selecting Found Dominican Republic Mission, Building Up Los Cocos, or if you are near us, you can simply pick up the envelope at the Welcome Center and bring it back to the church. Each envelope has the amount of donation you'd like to make from $1. If you are interested in joining the mission trip, please join our interest meeting on October 23rd. And I want to express my deep gratitude to everyone who has been worshiping with us through your giving. I know your giving, small or big, is an expression of your faith, and we encourage your participation by using our online giving or text give to the number on the screen. Let us invite Pastor Chris to share his message today about serve as the essential practice of the Christian life.
Navigating the road of life can be challenging. Increasing demands on our time, strained relationships, and feeling small in the face of injustice. Being a disciple of Jesus Christ can help us not only find a better path, but can transform the rocky road of life. Get your walking shoes on as we join together for The Walk, 5 essential practices of the Christian life.
How's your walk going? We've been talking about the journey of faith like a walk, something that we go forward and are always in motion. This is the 3rd week of the walk, the 5 essential practices of the Christian life. And as Pastor JiSun and I are preaching on the walk of faith, I myself have continued to try and walk every day. 2 weeks ago, I shared that 10,000 steps is my goal just for my own health. mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it's been a great journey. This past weekend, I had an incredible opportunity to be in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And I was celebrating the wedding of the granddaughter of Reverend Dr. Charles Sayre, the pastor of this church for 25 years, up until 1990. And when I was in Steamboat Springs, the morning of the wedding, I had half a day to kill by myself. And I was so taken by the natural beauty. And in an attempt to get my 10,000 steps, I decided that I was just going to go and explore. And Steamboat Springs is a ski resort town on the side of a mountain overlooking a river valley. The Yampa River goes kind of in the middle of it, and there's a mountain on the other side. And in my effort to get 10,000 steps, I wanted to go to the top of the mountain, and then I wanted to go to the river. That was my goal. And I really didn't know how long it was going to take. Luckily, I had more than enough time. And I never got to the top of the mountain because it was a lot further than I thought it would be. And on a second walk that day, after I did meander northbound for a while, I decided that I needed to visit the river. That rivers have always fed my soul. I grew up along the Allegheny River in western Pennsylvania, and no matter what, I just wanted to see the river. And in that area, when you're kind of in the side of a mountain, you don't really know where the river is. You just, when the other mountain ends, you assume it's down there. So I didn't know how far it was. I figured, half an hour down, half an hour back, I'll get most of my steps. And so I embarked. Well, you can probably imagine that when you're dealing with such elevation and such distances, it was more like a 7-mile journey that day. And I was not gone for a half an hour. It's more like 4 hours total. And I meandered down and I kept going and kept going and kept going towards the river and kept having to redirect. And I would pull out my phone to look on maps, and that wasn't really helpful because I was doing trails. And ultimately, I just kept walking toward where the other mountain descended. I just was going towards the valley. And when I finally got to the river, several hours after I started, it was worth it. The sun and the blue sky and the clouds were reflecting on the water, and I could see the other side of the mountain over the river, and I looked back, and it was just amazing. Breathtaking. I saw Mother Nature in full bloom. A magpie came down right in front of me. And no matter what, since I made the river the goal, didn't matter how long that it took, it was worth the trip. I think about the Christian journey, the faith journey, our walk in following Jesus in a very similar way that often, I don't know if you're like me, but I like to plot my trips. I like to use a map to see exactly where I am, exactly where I'm going, the route I'm going to take, and I want to know how long it's going to take. But following Jesus is kind of like that journey to the river. You don't exactly know what it looks like, and you don't exactly know how long it's going to take. But you make the river your goal, or you make following Jesus your goal. You walk in that direction. And here are 2 things I want to reflect on today. Number 1, it takes as long as it takes. Number 2, the journey is worth the trip. It's worth every bit of the trip. We have been talking about the 5 practices of the Christian life. The first is worship, that we seek to worship God, not just once a week in church, but every day with communing in nature, with being grateful, and just being in awe of God's goodness in our lives. And last week, Pastor JiSun looked at study and engaging with Scripture and letting God's Scripture speak to us and even speak through us. And today, I'm looking at serving. When we serve others and serve God, it's like walking in a direction. It gets messy at times, and we can't control how long it takes and exactly where we're going to go, but it is worth every step of the journey. When we talk about serving, really, when we follow Jesus, we're talking about 2 things. Jesus over and over again said the greatest commandments were to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And so when we serve, we're serving God, and we're serving one another as an act of serving God. I want to share 2 scriptures today. The first comes from the Hebrew Bible, the book of Joshua, chapter 24. Now, therefore, revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua followed Moses. Moses died right before the Israelite people arrived at the land that God promised them to settle after they had been wandering in the wilderness from Egypt 40 years. They fled slavery in Egypt. And after 40 years, they got to the promised land. And right before they crossed the river, Moses died on the mountain. And Joshua takes them and leads them to success. And so he is the successor of Moses in leading the people. And this passage comes at the end of his long life. And he gathers the people to him in a place that's known as Shechem. And he says, you have got to choose moving forward what your North Star is going to be, who you're serving. And he says, put away the temporary gods that your ancestors served, either in Egypt or their own ancestors before Abraham. The gods that really do nothing, the wooden statues, the golden statues, the shiny things that promise fair weather success. And he says, serve the Lord. And the Lord, it really replaces the Hebrew word, which is the name of God. We would say Yahweh. He says, but if you're not going to serve Yahweh, choose who it is that you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve Yahweh, the God who has carried us through the whole time, the God who has provided, who promised us this land. I think what's key in this passage is that what Joshua is saying is, I get it, that it's good that when we're facing challenges to look at other nations and say, oh, look, they're having a better crop than we are. Maybe we should worship their God. Or they won this battle and we had defeat. Or their stock market is doing well and our economy is awful. Maybe we should worship the deities or chase the things that they are. But Joshua is saying, me and my household, we trust that no matter what, ultimately God cares for us and we will serve the Lord. At the end of his life, he's basically asking Israel, the people, the nation, to make a decision for their own future. Will you continue to run from chasing shiny thing after shiny thing, deity after deity, or will you be faithful to the one God who has proven to always be faithful to them? That's the primary question we ask ourselves as we seek to follow Jesus on the walk of faith. Who will you serve? There's this sentence in the Hebrew Bible, here I am, send me. Is that something that you're willing to say to God? Are you willing to lay down the idols of success, the treadmill or the ladder of success? There's that great quote we use in the sermon trailer for this series. So many people spend their lives climbing the ladder of success to only find when they get at the top, it's on the wrong wall. You know, so many of us, we chase a career. We chase the right things to get the right things. We chase the idea of happiness. We chase the idea of the right relationships. And those are just like the idols of the ancient peoples. What does it mean to say, as for me, I will serve God, the Lord, who loves me, who created me, and who's always watching after me? And to serve God, it's about letting go of the map on our phone in which we want to know exactly where we're going, how we're going to get there, and the amount of time. Because when we serve God, we set that down and we say, not my will, Lord, but your will. It takes as long as it takes. But the promise is that when we follow the river, it's worth the trip. The journey is worth every step of the trip. Well, for Jesus, who is a prophet and a rabbi and our Savior, he taught the Hebrew scriptures. And so often he was asked, what are the great commandments? What's the most important part of the law? And he always started with Deuteronomy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength. Serve God, right? But then he always quickly pivoted and said, there's a second, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus is always showing us that what Micah 6:8 says. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness or compassion, and walk humbly with God. To serve God means also to serve others. So the second scripture I want to read today comes from Matthew, and it is Matthew 20. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked a favor of him. And he said to her, what do you want? She said to him, declare that these 2 sons of mine will sit, one at your right hand, one at your left in your kingdom. But Jesus answered, you do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink? They said to him, we are able. He said to them, you will indeed drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left, this is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. When the 10 heard it, they were angry with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to him and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you, but whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave. Who can fault the mother of these 2 disciples of Jesus, these 2 brothers? She comes to him and she says, Master, do me a favor. When you become king, remember they believed Jesus would be the Messiah, the promised king over Israel, not in heaven, but on earth. She said, when you get to be king in your kingdom, will you make my sons your top advisors, your chiefs? And also, you can't fault the other disciples for being irritated and offended that their mommy is lobbying for them to be in power. Jesus does this beautiful thing. He very compassionately calls them and he says, you know, the rulers of the Gentiles, think of the Roman Empire and other nations that were in the area. He says, the worldly rulers show their power and authority by lording it over others, by eating really well at the expense of the poor, by living really well, enabled and empowered by injustice in the land, by being in authority, by putting to death the people who are criminals or their enemies or their opponents. And he says, it will not be so among you. He doesn't say, please don't let it be. He tells them, it will not be so among you, my followers. If you want to be the greatest, you must become the least. And if you want to be the best, you have to be the servant of all. Jesus shows us that when we make serving God our goal, we end up serving God's children, others, those that are put in our path. I believe that service is one of the most important parts of following Jesus, because we're not just trying to please God, make God happy so that God gives us what we want, but we're doing what Jesus says to his disciples in another passage. Take up your cross and follow me. The Apostle Paul says, I die with Christ and I am risen with Christ. That we must let go of our self-serving motives and our life. And so we're letting go of the desire to climb the ladder of success that gives us what we want. And instead we're saying, I'm no longer my own, but I am yours. That is a phrase that comes from something called the Wesleyan Covenant Prayer, a prayer attributed to John Wesley and the early Methodists of the 1700s. I am no longer my own, but I am thine. For the early Methodists and for the modern Methodists, and all people of faith who seek to follow Jesus, it's this idea that I am not just chasing my own happiness, but to serve God, I'm going to serve God's children. So I'm going to be of use and I'm going to help others. I've had some incredible privileged moments in my life to see the work of Christian, faithful people around the world. Many years ago, I worked for the mission agency of the United Methodist Church. And so I got to see Methodists at work in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America, as well as in North America. And one of the experiences that I will never forget was I was in Sierra Leone, touring hospitals, birthing clinics, schools, churches, an eye hospital, just some amazing things that Methodists had built to serve underserved and underprivileged populations. One of the projects that I visited and took some photos and video of was something called the Limb Fitting Center. I believe it was in the town of Bose, Sierra Leone, a remote area. And this was a place where people who had lost limbs could get prosthetic legs. Now, one of the results of a long, bloody civil war in Sierra Leone is that many people were left without arms and legs. And so Methodists put this limb fitting center together to give people a new lease on life so that they could walk, so that they could work, so that they could play soccer and get their lives back. One day I was there visiting the center and I heard this strange noise in the distance. I looked over and there was a young boy pedaling a bike with his hands. And he was just flying down a dirt road, and he came and he kind of did circles around us and he smiled. And I got to interact with him and take some pictures of his. And I learned that the Limb Fitting Center also gave these hand crank bikes to kids who had contracted polio. And this boy got polio as a young child and his legs were underformed. They were very, very thin and he wasn't able to walk. Before he went to the Limb Fitting Center, he had to pull himself on the ground, on his stomach. And this bike, like other bikes that were handed out at the Limb Fitting Center, gave him a new life. He was able to get around and he was going to school. You know, this bike I found was donated by Methodists in Ohio by way of Methodists in Florida who built the bikes and who shipped them to Sierra Leone. And there were Methodists who went over to be a part of it and to distribute them and to make sure that that center was moving forward. People in a simple, humble attempt to say, here I am, God, send me. How will you use me? Somehow, Methodists in Ohio heard that there were kids living with the aftermath of polio, aftermath of war, living without limbs, living without the ability to walk. Something led them to give their time, their resources to serve others. And they may not have ever met that boy, but man, his smile would light up a whole continent. Serving others makes the journey of faith worth the trip. One of the reasons I think that we often don't serve is we're busy. We're really busy. We do a lot of things. We have a lot of activities. That's one of the ways I think we keep moving in a challenging world is we keep ourselves focused on getting from here to here. And we fill our lives with activities and events and work and jobs. And so, I just don't have any time to do that or this. Or one of the other reasons I think that we don't serve is that we don't know how. The needs really are so overwhelming. If you read the news, we live in a hurting world, in a troubled time. There's war in Ukraine. I want to help. I don't know how to help. There's poverty. There's injustice. There's racism. There's sexism. There's economic injustice. There's war. There's so much. I don't know what to do. Well, one of the things I think we miss along the way is that service is energy output that actually gives us energy input. And we usually just think about, I don't have anything else to give. The gift and the key of Christian service is that when we help others, when we serve God's children, we get back. I think of an alternator. I grew up around a lot of car mechanics. And if you know anything about cars, there's something called the alternator. And if you turn the lights on of your car, but don't turn the car on, inevitably your car battery is going to die because it can't put out all the energy forever, right? It runs out of energy. But the way that you can run your headlights on a long trip and keep your radio on and keep the heater on when you're running your car is that the alternator takes the energy output of the pulleys the pistons, right, move the gears and the pulleys, and the energy output creates energy input. And so as your car is moving, it creates energy that powers the rest of the car. So you're not draining your battery. That alternator is output that leads to input. When we serve others, when we volunteer to church, and when we get outside of our comfort zone and give back, this church does so many amazing things. People deliver flowers to shut-ins or those who've recovered from surgery or lost a loved one. We've donated thousands of items to the Cherry Hill Food Pantry. People tutor kids in Camden County to help them to learn to read and to excel in school when otherwise they might not. People go to the Dominican Republic and help build homes for people who otherwise wouldn't have access to a good and a safe home. People serve in so many ways, and yet there are always more opportunities to serve. When we get outside of our comfort zone and stop focusing on when we're going to get where we want to get and the pathway to get there, we realize that we get back. You know, there's a letter that was written by Bill Wilson, who is one of the primary founders of Alcoholics Anonymous in the 30s and 40s. And towards the end of Bill Wilson's life, he was really struggling. He had founded 12-Step Recovery, and this movement had helped thousands of people recover from alcoholism and addiction. And yes, yet he was still struggling with feelings of depression. He had been sober for many years, but he was really struggling. So he wrote this letter that's called The Next Frontier Emotional Sobriety. He wrote it to someone else who was recovering from addiction. And it's a beautiful letter, but I want to read an excerpt to you. He says, I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis prayer. It's better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula, all right. But why didn't it work for me? Suddenly, I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence on people, on circumstances, to supply me with the prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them. And when defeat came, so did my depression. There wasn't a chance of making the outgoing love of St. Francis a workable and joyous way of life until these fatal and almost absolute dependencies were cut away. Because I had over the years undergone a little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never before been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any set of circumstances, whatever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis had. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions I saw were really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing a love appropriate to each relation in life. Plainly, I could not avail myself of God's love until I was able to offer it back to Him by loving others as He would have me. Think about that. I can't avail myself of God's love unless I can offer it to others. And if I'm just living for what I want, and I'm just trying to get my own stuff, my own belly full, my own happiness, my own success, my own kids to be happy. And there are people who are living in injustice and poverty and who are hurting, who are facing war, and people who are lonely, even in my own town, my own neighborhood, next door. The only way to experience the love of God that we so desperately seek is to share it with others. Following Jesus is about plugging into that alternator. Giving a little bit, stepping out beyond our comfort zone, serving at church, delivering flowers, fighting against injustice, serving others, helping people, and just showing up. We plug ourselves into that experience where as we love God, as we love neighbor, God shows up and we see that love that we so desperately long for. and need. Friends, I don't know where you are in your journey, but I would ask you this. Who do you choose to serve this day? Are you willing to say, God, here I am, send me. I'm going to walk in the direction of serving you. It's going to take as long as it takes because I know that by helping you, by showing up to others, that it'll be worth every step of the journey. Friends, think about ways that you can serve God and serve one another in this world. You can go to haddonfieldumc.org/now to see some of the service opportunities here. You can serve in your local community, wherever you may be. But in following Jesus, one of the most important practices is to not serve ourselves, but to serve God who loves all people and requires us to do justice, to love compassion, and walk humbly in this world. Thanks for being a part of our worship. Share it with others. May we be the church in a hurting world. Amen.
Your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I